Hi, everyone. Welcome to White Coats of the Round Table, a healthcare podcast focused on career development, non clinical careers, and burnout prevention. My name is Mike Asback, and I'm running solo today. No John McDonald. Unfortunately, at the very last minute, he was called in to work early, something that we all can ascribe to or be familiar with in healthcare. So, unfortunately, John was unable to make it today. I know 2 weeks ago and then again last week, we continue to tease the idea that we want to do an episode on wellness and biohacking and Huberman, and it's still going to happen. I know we keep promising it. We were going to do it up until about 11 p.m. last night when John found out he had to go into work. So we're going to push that episode until next week once again, because I'm really excited to be able to talk about that. I think through our previous conversations, listeners may know I'm a bit of a skeptic of these types of, fad wellness things. And John is a very big Huberman fan. John waits 90 to 120 minutes to drink his coffee, and I think that sounds inhuman. So I'm really excited to have that conversation with John, hopefully next week or maybe the week after, because I think we might have a guest next week lined up. But today I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. I'll maybe try and keep the episode shorter because I'm sure listeners can only take so much of me talking without John interjecting some humor and some other perspective. But I want to talk a little bit today about career coaching. We've done this topic in the past, and I wanted to circle back to it for a couple different reasons. One being one of the core reasons that John and I started White Coats at the Round Table was we felt like there was a lot of people that were burned out in healthcare. Certainly, if you look at any statistical metric in healthcare, the majority of professionals are burned out. There was a ton of dissatisfaction with careers. There was a ton of burnout. And yet we felt like there was not a lot of great resources out there to help people figure out the path that they wanted to pursue within their healthcare career. And I think career coaches have exploded in prevalence, not just in healthcare, but in just the economy in general. It's a huge industry. And certainly career coaches can have benefits, but I have a lot of concerns and worry about career coaching, especially within the healthcare space. One of the big reasons I worry about this in the healthcare space specifically is very often the jobs that we have open to us as healthcare professionals are driven by our licensure or our clinical expertise. Even if we're pivoting into a non-clinical role, very often those non-clinical jobs are based on the expertise that we have developed as clinicians. So I think in those types of situations, it's maybe a little bit different than someone who went to school for a business degree and then is trying to figure out what path they want to chart in their career. But I'd like to spend some time today and maybe just go through a couple arguments in favor of career coaching for healthcare professionals, and then also talk about some concerns or arguments against career coaching. And yes, it's not lost on me that I'm doing this when John is not here, since John, I think, is a big proponent of career coaching. So I'm maybe strategically doing this as a solo episode so that John isn't here to push back on my thoughts on it. So, John, if you listen to this down the road when it releases, if you want to circle back and actually have a good argument about this, I'm open to it, and hopefully the listeners will benefit from it. So let's start by talking about some of the arguments that are pro career coaching. And the way that I see this, I think career coaches can serve a couple really important benefits. I think the first being that career coaches can provide personalized guidance. My general rule of thumb when I think about recommendations is that specific recommendations should always be met with a red flag. And the way I say this is, think about if you had chest pain as a listener and you know something's not right, so you need to get to the hospital. So here's what I'm going to do. I will give you instructions on how to get to the hospital, and I'm going to give you instructions on how to get to the hospital from my office to the hospital in Buffalo, New York. Is that helpful? Not really. Why is it not helpful? Because my advice is very specific to the hospital that is in my community. And my advice would be how to get to the hospital from my office. So that advice is not applicable to the general audience of this podcast. Now, if my advice was, if a listener's having chest pain, call 911, is that good advice? Yes, it is. A, because it's probably the appropriate thing to do if you have chest pain. But B, it's more broad advice that can be applicable to everyone. My worry with career coaching, and more broadly with just the self-help industry, is that I think very often they present very specific advice. And a lot of times that advice can be, this worked for me, so you must do this as well to have success. And just because that worked for the one individual doesn't necessarily mean that that advice is going to be broad, generic, and applicable to everybody. It may be very specific to that individual situation. So I do think that that's maybe a critique of career coaching, but it also can be a positive in the sense that if you are hiring a career coach, instead of watching YouTube videos that are motivational or YouTube videos or reading articles from the Harvard Business Review on how to up-level your career, maybe you hire someone and you hopefully pay them to then provide specific and personalized guidance. In a perfect setting, a career coach comes in, meets with you, gets to understand your skills, your strengths, your passion, and then can help you formulate an action plan that is specific to you. So I think this is a situation where specific advice may be beneficial, but even in those scenarios, I get a little bit hesitant because my worry is that a lot of career coaches out there may just provide specific advice, and I'm giving finger quotes, but really are still using a broad algorithmic approach to this. So if you're looking for a career coach, I would always look for someone who can provide a tailored advisement plan to your situation. The other area that I think career coaching can be beneficial is accountability. Very often, the answers in career coaching are not some magical answer that is behind some shrouded veil and only people that are enlightened can access it. A lot of times, the advice is very broad, it's very generic, and it's very intuitive, but sticking with it is the hard part. So, if you are applying for jobs, let's say if you're looking to make a career pivot, your head may tell you that it's good to customize your CV for each job. It's good to write a cover letter for each job. But human behavior may take over and you say, "You know what? I'm getting no callbacks. I'm not getting any traction. I'm just going to send out my generic resume to 150 people and we'll see what happens." In my hope in a situation like that is if you had a career coach, they would hold you to account and say, "No, continue to provide personalized cover letters, continue to provide CVs that are oriented to the job that you're applying, and maybe help continue to keep you accountable to best practices where your head mentally you may know, yes, this is best practice, but at the same time, human behavior doesn't always align with what we intellectually know to be the best approach." So I think having a career coach, just like going to the gym, I could probably go to the gym and do reasonably well staying fit. But if I hired a personal trainer, that personal trainer not only would be able to provide me with a customized plan of exercise, but may also be able to keep me accountable and make sure that I'm going. I think there is research that supports that when you have a personal trainer or when you participate in group exercise classes, the likelihood of maintaining compliance with that fitness regimen goes up versus just individual exercise. And I think the same thing can be applicable within a career. The third thing that I think about in terms of benefits of career coaching would be networking opportunities. So career coaches, by definition, if they're doing this for a living, they're going to know a lot of people. They're going to have a lot of networks. A good career coach is hopefully having lots of conversations with people within that industry, whether it be to help find jobs if they're looking for their clients to make a career pivot or a new job, or if they're helping clients prepare for a newer or higher role within that organization. One will hope that a competent career coach is going to have a broad network. And if you are paying someone a premium dollar to not only help you clean up your resume, maybe help with interviewing techniques, figure out what jobs may be good for your skill set, but then also potentially make some phone calls. If you have a career coach that says, "You know what, I know someone over at that company, let me give them a call and just see if they can put your CV at the top of the pile." That can be immensely valuable. We've talked so many times on this podcast about how beneficial networking is and how, as healthcare professionals, we often don't spend adequate time networking because we maybe just feel that as clinicians, we can go to our jobs, we can see our patients, and then go home. We don't need to go to the alumni network cocktail mixer because we're clinicians. We're not always looking for new projects or new collaborations or new cross pollination. But I think having those networks can be really valuable. So if you are hiring a career coach and in part you feel that that career coach may tap you into a network that you don't have access to, then that may be valuable. Career coaches may also provide skill development. So I think this is an area that I may be a little bit more skeptical. So career coaches may be able to help you identify areas that your skills are lacking and then help you make or formulate a plan to build on those skills. So let's use non-clinical career pivots as an example. If you are a clinician and maybe you're interested in becoming a medical science liaison, one thing a career coach may identify is they may look through your CV, they may interview you, talk to you about skills, strengths, weaknesses, and identify that your public speaking skills need more work, or that your ability to present scientific data needs to be fortified. They may be able to identify these skill deficits and then help guide you on ways to improve that. Maybe it's tying you in with LinkedIn Learning, or some sort of free online open source course. Or maybe it's something even as formal as recommending that you go get your MBA or your Master's of Health Administration. They may recommend formal schooling or formal didactic training, but the career coach in theory is going to be tied into the industry that you're looking to pivot into and be able to identify whether your skill set lines up, and makes you a competitive candidate, or if there's something that you need to do to maybe up level your CV, up level your skill set to make yourself more attractive. The last one that I would look at in terms of arguments for career coaching would be objective feedback. And I think it's valuable to have someone in your career that has no skin in the game. Very often we surround ourselves with friends, family, mentors, and those people may not necessarily always be critical because they care about us. And as a result, they may be hesitant to be critical of us. One benefit, I think, of hiring a career coach is you may have someone then who will tell you, no, I don't think this job is actually a good fit for you. Hey, I know you want to become an MSL, but I really don't think you've got what it takes. And that may be hard to hear, but sometimes that may be necessary. Sometimes it may be something where burnout is driven by a mismatch of what you believe you're capable of achieving within your career versus what your skill set maybe lines you up to do. My worry with this is I'm not sure how many career coaches will do that. You're paying career coaches typically a very high degree of money, usually four figures. And I'm not necessarily sure if that career coach is going to take that four figures and then tell you that you're not good. So it's maybe a mixed bag there, because I'm not quite sure if a career coach would be as blunt and as honest as they should be. But I think in my life, I'm trying to think if I wanted to go after a chief medical officer position and I was applying and applying, and I just felt that I was ready, that my career had now progressed to the point that I could try and get an executive level board position at a major company. It may be a great thing if the career coach says, hey, I don't actually think you're there yet. You've only been doing medicine for 12 years. You've had great clinical experience, but you don't have enough executive experience to be pursuing these roles. I would hope that someone would be able to give me that feedback and maybe prevent me from continuing to have a lot of frustration if I'm applying for jobs and not gaining any traction. So those are the 5 that I could think of at 11 p.m. last night when I decided that this was going to be the topic of today in terms of arguments in favor of career coaching. Now I'm going to shift and I want to talk a little bit about my concerns associated with career coaching. And one of the main things that comes with that is the 5 arguments that we just laid out of why career coaching can be beneficial. Those are all great things. My worry with career coaching, though, is I think a lot of those can also be achieved at lower cost or free through mentorship, through good peers, and just a lot of personal networking. So one of my favorite podcasts, and I think I've referenced it before on this one, but I love the Prof G podcast by Scott Galloway. It's a business podcast, and he is irreverent. He's funny, but he also does a really nice mix of business, but also a lot of discussion of kind of like workplace developmental psychology type of stuff. And he's generally a pretty intellectually curious guy. So I really do appreciate the show. It's quite entertaining. And one of the things that he talks about a lot is the importance of having what he calls a kitchen cabinet. And the idea behind this is having kind of a panel of informal advisors in your life. And he talks about the importance of having those people be outside of your industry. So it's really great to have peers that maybe are also healthcare professionals that are able to give you insight, give you guidance, give you mentorship. And it's also good to have mentors, maybe people that are farther along in their career in positions that you aspire to achieve, that may be there to also give mentorship. But Scott Galloway makes the argument that it's also valuable to have people that are completely outside of that. If you're working in healthcare, then maybe part of your kitchen cabinet is a friend of yours who's an electrician, but is also a small business owner and can give you a completely different perspective on career development, career choices, things like that. But the idea of having a kitchen cabinet is you have this group of informal advisors, people that you trust, people that you value, and then bounce ideas off of them. Go to them and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about this role. Here's where I think I'm really lining up well for it. Here's where I think my skills and strengths are. Here's the areas that I think are maybe weak. Here are the areas that I think I maybe don't fit this." And it's good to get multiple opinions on that. And I think a lot of times the benefits that come from career coaching, you can get a very similar experience if you have a good kitchen cabinet assembled. Lots of people that can give different opinions, and then you can coalesce those opinions into a singular argument or a singular recommendation. On average, when I looked up last night, the average cost of career coaching, and this is not for healthcare, but just more broadly, was about $170 an hour. So in healthcare, it may be more. If you're hiring a physician career coach or a PA or an NP or a pharmacist career coach, they may cost more because salaries in healthcare are higher. And presumably, you are hiring a career coach who has had success in their career. And if you are hiring someone who is successful in their career, they're probably not going to do it for $49 an hour. So you're paying a good amount of money to these folks. And once again, they're providing a service that certainly can be valuable, but I also think that the same things that you can get out of career coaching, you may be able to find in different ways at a more affordable cost. So that leads to, I think, my first official argument against career coaching, and that's cost. If we assume a mean of $170 an hour, most of these career coaches charge several $1,000s, and usually it's for some prescribed period of time, $4,000 for 6 months of coaching. And I think the cost on that can run up rather quickly. And within that, I think that a lot of times there's stuff that's happening that is low value work. So maybe that be you taking a skills assessment or you guys sitting and having coffee and just talking through things. And that's valuable in the sense that I don't want a career coach making recommendations if they don't fully understand your individual situation. But at the same time, do you feel it's a good investment of your money and your time to spend maybe, let's say, 3 to 4 hours? So $600 to $800 to spend on your career coach just to have them get to know you, learn who you are, and then understand what your goals are. This is where I think the kitchen cabinet can be beneficial because hopefully, if you've assembled a good kitchen cabinet of advisors, these are all people that know you, probably have been in your life for many years, and frankly, are going to have a greater understanding of who you are, what makes you tick, and what may be a good fit for you, even if they're not in healthcare and may not fully understand the nuances of each healthcare role. The other concern that I have with career coaching is quality might be highly variable. I think career coaching is unregulated and as a result can often be of a very wide variance of quality. In a perfect world, if you're hiring a career coach, this is going to be someone who has had immense success within the industry that you aspire to be in and is looking to give back. Maybe they're doing career coaching in semi-retirement because they've already accomplished everything that they want to do in their career. And now they're looking to just make some money here and there, but also give back and maybe have this be somewhat altruistic where they're helping others along the way. That sounds great, right? But unfortunately, I think what ends up happening is a lot of times career coaches are people that have not necessarily had a ton of success in their careers. Maybe they've had some, maybe they've, had middling success, but a lot of times people are career coaches because it's a nice side hustle. It's a great way to make some extra income. It's something that you can do from home while still working your clinical job. And some people that do this as a side hustle and are just working as clinicians and maybe are kind of middle of the road healthcare professionals, they may be great coaches. I don't want to say that the only good coaches are ones that have crushed it in their career, because I think teaching and doing are two very different things that require two very different skill sets. So there's incredible professors that probably would not do great if they went and worked in the industry that they teach on, and vice versa. There's incredible people that work within the industry that if they went to become a professor, they would probably be terrible. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think there's a story about, oh shoot, who was it? Was it Albert Einstein that struggled with teaching? I forget what it is. So we'll have to cut that out, but I don't know if Sarah's going to edit this. But there's a great story, and I'll maybe try and circle back around. It's in Adam Grant's book, Hidden Potential, that talks about a very, very famous scientist who just could not teach to save his life, and I think actually got removed from a faculty position as a result. It might have been Einstein, but don't quote me. So how do you figure out whether your career coach is going to be quality? I think a good way to do it, a good yardstick, can be what they've accomplished in their career. If they are someone who has really not worked in the industry that they're now advising, if they are looking to help you pivot to a non-clinical career but have only worked as a clinician their entire career, then that would be a red flag to me. I'd want to see some level of relevant experience and presumably some level of accomplishment in the area of career that you aspire to pursue. But the other area I think of quality validation is hard because a lot of career coaching is really not measurable. It's a non-provable thesis, because if you hire a career coach and you get a job, who's to say that that job would not have come without a career coach? So it's really hard to gauge the job placement success rates, or successfully negotiate a raise, all those types of things, simply because it's almost impossible to assign objective metrics to this. So I think it's really difficult to know whether quality is there. I think the best way to do it, if you are going to hire a career coach, is look at their own CV, look at their own resume. Have they accomplished things that are relevant to the career? But also, word of mouth really matters. I would not hire a career coach unless you've talked to at least a couple people that have worked with that career coach and can give a stamp of approval or give their thoughts on it. So if you're vetting out a career coach, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask them to give some references of past clients that you can talk to and just get an idea what to expect from the career coach, but what the clients also felt was valuable. What did they get out of the career coaching that has helped them down the road in their career? Dependence. So I think another area that makes me nervous is dependence. So there's a risk with this that individuals who hire a career coach may be reliant on their career coach for decision making, and this may potentially hinder their ability to operate independently. And this is almost like the phenomenon with diets, is if you do a fad diet, if you do a diet where you're doing, something wonky, I'm going to drink apple cider vinegar every morning, and then I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks followed by deep breaths, and then I can eat this many calories. Those types of crazy restrictive diets generally don't work, in the sense that as soon as you stop the diet, you return to your old habits, you return to your old patterns of caloric consumption, and the weight comes back. And this is my worry with this, is that if you hire a career coach, by definition, you're hiring a career coach because you're feeling stuck. You feel like your career is not where you wanted to be. You feel dissatisfied. You're looking for something to change. And if you're using a career coach to implement that change, will that change be sustainable even when you are no longer working with the career coach? The hope, of course, is that a career coach is, the old adage, if you teach a man to fish versus giving them a fish. If you give them a fish, they are eating for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he never goes hungry. And I think that's really what we need to look for in career coaching. But once again, the hard thing is, as you're vetting or shopping for a career coach, how do you know if that career coach is going to help you build a skill set or an approach to your career that is sustainable once you're flying solo? Because if the goal here is to have a career coach that you are constantly dependent on, then that's actually, in my opinion, going to cause more harm than good. And I think a great example of that would be the Shrink Next Door podcast. If you haven't listened to it, I love it because I love mental health type of stuff like that. And anytime that my day job in psychiatry can overlap with my side hustle or my passion for career development and workplace psychology, it's always a good day. And to summarize it, Marty, who is the protagonist in the podcast, has a bad shrink, a bad psychiatrist who basically is not just providing mental health treatment, but also is kind of quasi career coaching, and then ends up giving very bad career advice that causes significant detriment to the patient. So it's a really, really interesting story. I highly recommend you listen to the podcast, or you can, I think, check out on Apple TV. They made it into a TV series, but it's not nearly as good as the podcast. So check out the podcast for sure. It's on Wondery. So fourth, I think mismatched goals. And this ties into what we talked about earlier with personalized or specific recommendations. My worry is that a career coach may come into this with more algorithmic approaches to advancing your career. Well, you just have to do this, this, and this, and then this, and this will occur. And if a coach doesn't fully understand you as an individual, what your goals are, what is making you tick, maybe what is making you burned out, then their solutions may not be relevant or effective. And this can be obviously a waste of time, but also a waste of resources. So, how do you know? Once again, how do you know when you're matching or trying to find a career coach that they're going to properly understand your goals and then be able to provide advice? And I think the hard thing with this is, by definition, again, if you are hiring a career coach, it's probably because you're looking for someone to help shape that plan, help shape that guidance. So, what if they help shape that guidance in a way that's not actually a good fit for what you want to do? And we'll use MSL again. If you're a clinician and you're feeling burned out and you feel like, you know what, I'd really like to be a medical science liaison because I want to get out of patient care. I want a job that is more flexible, maybe some remote work. So you meet with a career coach and the career coach says, yeah, MSL sounds great. Let's get you a job in MSL. And then it turns out that MSL is a terrible fit. Maybe you didn't realize that travel was going to be really taxing. Maybe you didn't realize that speaking with KOLs, with key opinion leaders, was going to be a stressful endeavor for you. Maybe you didn't realize that going to conferences or having to write papers on behalf of the company was something that just wasn't of interest to you. As an individual, I look at that and say, well, of course, a person may not fully understand the roles or the job. But if you're paying four figures to a career coach and you end up in a job that is just completely misaligned with what works for you, I would be somewhat critical of the career coach, because my hope is that a good career coach would have been able to identify maybe issues that would raise red flags that you weren't actually a good fit for that job. So again, I think my worries continue to have a recurrent theme, is that the problems that arise with career coaching are also ones that we maybe struggle to identify solutions to, or identify as problems as you're shopping for a career coach. These are all problems that occur or pop up retrospectively after you've already committed the money, already committed the time. And that worries me. If you're paying a ton of money for something and then in the end result, it doesn't work well for you, I think that's hard. Lastly, the last one that I'll leave it with is overemphasis on coaching. So I think some individuals might place too much emphasis on the coaching, and this may come at the expense of taking action on their own. And this may lead to a lack of progress. So if you have a career coach that wants to meet with you weekly and talk about your weekly wins or talk about, whatever it may be, but there's less of an emphasis on you building that individualized skill set or you continuing to take action to progress your career, then essentially this just becomes counseling. And I worry about that a lot, because I think a lot of times what happens is people that don't have counseling degrees, that don't have any training or expertise in mental health, can label themselves a career coach and then basically provide psychotherapy. And that can be dangerous, because psychotherapy is a very powerful tool. Therapists have an immense responsibility from an ethical perspective, because they can carry significant sway and influence over their clients. So to have someone that is not trained and just a lay person essentially doing psychotherapy and then wielding the responsibility and influence that comes with psychotherapy, I think that can be really a recipe for disaster. So once again, see Shrink Next Door if you're looking for a great example of that. And that's with a trained professional. In the Shrink Next Door, Dr. Hirschkoff is a psychiatrist. He is trained. I think he was a malevolent psychiatrist, in my opinion. But once again, I don't want to spoil it for you. So I think it's hard, again, because how do you know if you're shopping for a career coach and you ask them, what is your plan? What is our emphasis going to be on? And they say, well, we're going to meet once a week and talk about progress. That sounds great, right? That doesn't sound like a bad thing. It sounds like a career coach that is going to be invested in you and invested in your success. So it's very difficult to know if there's going to be too much of an emphasis on coaching as opposed to building skill sets or implementing action plans. until it's already retrospective, till you've already gone through all of the coaching, and then you look back and say, you know what, that wasn't very helpful, or that didn't do anything for me. So those are the 10 points. I think the 5 arguments for and the 5 arguments against that I wanted to lay out. Once again, I'm going to keep this a little bit shorter since it's a solo episode. I don't think my takeaway from this is don't hire career coaches. I think career coaches can have a role and they can provide value, but I think the cost incurred by career coaching should justify careful consideration. I think there's very few things in life where we would spend $4,000 to $6,000 impulsively. At least I would hope. If we were going to go spend, a vacation in Europe, that would probably be of equivalent cost. We would presumably do a lot of research. We would not just book the first hotel we found. We would not just book the first flight we found. Rather, we would probably research what's the best time to go to Europe. When is going to have the best deals on flights and hotels? When is going to have the best weather? What activities do I want to do there? What kind of tourist activities? What are the best restaurants? There's a lot of planning that goes into a $4,000 to $6,000 vacation because that's a big, expensive vacation. And I would just hope and encourage anyone listening to this that if you're considering career coaching, think about it that way. Make sure that you're putting the same level of analysis and planning into hiring a career coach that you would into a big European vacation. My worry is I think the people that look to career coaches to help move them along in their career or help them get unstuck are also the people that maybe feel overwhelmed by the idea of planning and analyzing and assessing the validity of a career coach. So I get that it can be a bit of a catch-22. If you're someone that maybe feels like you need a career coach and you feel stuck, but you also feel overwhelmed, and even the idea of vetting a career coach and doing a deep analysis of whether career coaching or a specific career coach is going to benefit you, if that feels overwhelming, then maybe that's a good sign that you should start by building out your kitchen cabinet. So if that feels overwhelming, start with maybe identifying 3 to 4 people in your life that you value. 3 to 4 people that know you, that care about you, that understand you, and start talking to them. Tell them about your frustrations, tell them about what's going on with your career, and see what kind of advice they have, even if they're not in healthcare. I think a lot of times burnout is career indiscriminate. Every industry has burnout. If you're an electrician, you have burnout. Maybe that's a bad example because there's a joke to be made there. Maybe you just have current running through you, but everybody can experience burnout. So if you're having frustrations in your career, if you feel like you've hit a glass ceiling and you're not sure whether you stay within this current organization or maybe try and move elsewhere, if you feel your compensation is not keeping up with your value to the organization, those are all topics that I think do not have to be discussed specifically with someone in healthcare. I think an older relative, a peer, a friend, if you have people in your life that you trust, that you feel they are wise, that they are contemplative and deliberate, those are people that I think can probably give pretty solid advice. If you really work hard with your kitchen cabinet and you're still struggling and you still feel like you need someone to provide a roadmap, maybe then you go and look for a career coach. But I would just encourage everybody to not be flippant about spending thousands of dollars on a career coach if you're not really sure what you're going to get out of it. Have a very specific set of objectives or goals, and then make sure you vet that career coach very carefully. So as I said earlier, I know John may have a different opinion than this. So John, I hope you listen. And John, if you want to give a response to this, we can do it on the podcast, or maybe we can give you some space in the newsletter to give your reply. Otherwise, thank you guys for listening. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. I know that career coaching is very much in vogue, and there's a lot of people that do it. A lot of people have had success from it. So certainly, if you've had a good experience with career coaching, I'd love to hear from you. My vendetta here is not against all career coaches, but rather just that the process we go through to evaluate and assess the quality of career coaches, I think, needs to be a little bit more deliberate. So we'd love to hear from people because I think this is a conversation that I'd love to continue to dip back into and have as we move forward, since the entire purpose of this podcast and company is for career development. A little bit on our end, I think one of the reasons that this topic is so, I have so much passion or interest in it, is that one of the goals with White Coats at the Round Table is we try, between the podcast and the newsletter, is our goal is to try and put out as much information as we can that is free at the point of use and accessible but also to empower people to feel like they can find the information on their own. And it's kind of weird in healthcare because even when I look and Google, like if you Google how to be a healthcare consultant, there's not a whole lot out there that actually talks about how clinicians can make that pivot. So I think there is not a ton of information, in part because I think clinicians going into non-clinical roles is a relatively new phenomenon. It's something that is growing in scope and size, but I think the information and education on it hasn't kept up. In burnout in healthcare, although burnout has certainly been a thing for a long time, I think the prevalence of burnout has just exploded and accelerated through COVID. And as a result, there's maybe not as much information out there. There's a lot of information diagnosing burnout, talking about what burnout looks like. I feel like maybe resources are still lacking on how to combat or address burnout. So, our hope with this project is to provide as much of this information for free as we can. We like to think about that instead of paying thousands of dollars for a career coach, you can just go through our back catalog and pick and choose podcast episodes that may be interesting. If you go through those and you still need to hire someone, then go hire someone. But one of the things that John and I have also done recently is we do not do one-on-one consulting. I think our website still has it listed, but we made a decision that we just felt like it kind of goes against what we believe in terms of the goal and mission of this podcast or of this company. So we certainly do work at an enterprise level. If someone hires us to come and give educational seminars to a group, we do like to do that, in part because I think giving advice that's more broad and generic is appropriate as opposed to specific advice. And certainly if you're presenting to a group, the advice is going to be more broad and hopefully more applicable. But within White Coats, we do not do one-on-one coaching. We do not do one-on-one consulting for those reasons. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't give advice. One of the favorite things about this project is that every week I have usually a couple people that reach out on LinkedIn and may A, say that they like the show, but B, also have a quick question. And I love that. I want to help as much as we can. So if you are listening to this and you have a specific question about your career or uncertainty, shoot us a message. I think one of the coolest things with social media is we always just assume that people are busier than they are. And certainly John and I live busy lives, but at the same time, I think when people reach out to us with questions, it really fills our cup. It brings us a lot of joy because it reinforces the whole purpose of this project. I'd like to think that this project is not singularly focused on money or profit, but rather education first. John and I both thankfully have careers where we are very secure, so we can do this as a hobby. And if it makes money, great. But really, our primary passion is to try and help people and try and help empower and educate people to really pursue the best and most meaningful career that they can. All right, with that, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm still going to finish with some personal items, even though John is not here. I can't steal his personal item like I usually do. I'll just have to make up one of my own. So it is a fun season. I know I talk about my kids and I talk about the busyness of life a lot, but I really do enjoy this week. I think we have sporting events 4 days of the week, and it is so much fun. Last night we had soccer scrimmage, so we decided to take the whole family, and it's still indoor soccer, so it was at a field that was indoors and climate controlled, thankfully, because it's snowing right now in Buffalo. But we rushed home. Dinner was in the crock pot. I got home at 4 o'clock, and by 4:30 we were in the car driving to the scrimmage, and it was just so much fun to sit on the sidelines and visit with the other parents. It was actually a great opportunity to drive that social connection that I think is so important for mental health. And my other kids were thankfully able to play off to the side. There was an indoor basketball court right next to the soccer fields. So my other three kids were off playing basketball, burning energy, having so much fun. And I think in our society, we are becoming so individually focused with social media. So often people are going to work and then coming home, and they may not have any social interaction or social connection outside of their jobs or outside of social media, which is really a shallow social connection. And I think sports, especially youth sports, where the parents are all sitting on the sideline, is still such just an amazing source of community. So even though I'm not a people person, I really appreciate the socialization that comes with going to my kids' games and seeing the other parents, having my kids be able to run around and play with the other kids, the other siblings of the team. So I think this is maybe my ode to youth sports, even though I could probably spend a whole episode talking about the toxicity of youth sports parent culture as well, with yelling at the refs and yelling at the coaches and all that. But in terms of just being able to see people, watch our kids achieve, watch our kids do things, it's so much fun. It's so gratifying. And I'm really grateful to be in that stage of life with my wife and I. So thank you guys for listening in on this. I know the solo episodes can sometimes be draggle on. So if you stuck with me, I'm appreciative. This is Mike Asback, and we are White Coats of the Round Table. If you like what you hear, consider leaving us a review. If you don't like what you hear, definitely don't review us. Until next week, I hope everyone has a great day.